Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data management and analytics.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to another Data Demo Day. Over the next 3 hours, we'll be offering you an inside look at 3 of the top data technologies available today. And we've assembled another strong lineup for you. 3 solutions, each presenting a compelling value proposition across master data management, data catalogs, and data analytics. First up, Tamr. And they're a great solution to lead us off with because Tamr's cloud-native solutions offer an effective alternative to traditional master data management tools, using machine learning to do the heavy lifting to consolidate, cleanse, and categorize data. Tamr is the foundation for modern data ops at organizations like Toyota, Santander, and GSK, and they help to prioritize high-impact data management projects within your organization and build a business value framework for cloud MDM. And we're joined by Louise Baldwin, Solutions Director at Tamr, and Richard Lewis, Sales Engineer. Louise, Richard, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us.
Thanks, Doug.
Well, I know master data management is a classic business term, and I also know that it means a lot to you guys because you very much like to talk about mastering data. Louise, can you just give us a little sense of kind of where Tamr's coming from with regard to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about mastering data, it's really coming back to the kind of core challenges that we're solving from a data perspective. So we can think of it not only from a unification perspective of taking data from across sources to create that single view, but also enriching it, thinking about it from a quality perspective when we think about master data management. So looking forward to getting into some of those principles in more detail as we go and kind of expanding further.
Well, excellent. Well, it's always a pleasure to have a hot solution like Tamr join us for these types of events. I'm going to step out of the way. I'll come back in about 35 or 40 minutes with some questions, and you'll provide some answers. But otherwise, I know, Louise, you're going to give us a little bit of an overview of Tamr, and then Richard's going to come in and give us a demo. So I'll let you guys take it from here and talk to you in a bit.
Thanks, Doug. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. So I'm just going to share my screen. So jumping right into it and touching on more of kind of the core problem that we're actually solving. What is it that Tamr does? Well, last month, there was an overview in the Wall Street Journal about Jane Fraser, so Citigroup's new CEO, and the tasks ahead for her and the bank. And what was the biggest challenge, essentially, that they hit home on was tackling the data for regulators and ultimately the call from regulators for better data. And I think the quote within it that really hits home at the pain point that we're tackling at Tamr is that the regulators complained about that the bank essentially lacked clear data about customers. So Citigroup had never built a unifying customer identification system across its businesses. Fixing that, they said, would help appease regulators and help the bank deepen their relationships. And this is at its core the problem that Tamr really solves. So creating a mastered, unified, clean and accurate view of key entities for an organization. So we mentioned customers, but also other key entities like suppliers and products, but really whatever the key entities are for the business as a whole. And it's not just banks like Citigroup that are facing this challenge. We really see this problem across industries. So why does this problem exist? So when we look at the data management landscape today, big data is really no longer the primary challenge facing organizations. So we've seen tremendous progress in bringing together data at scale, moving from traditional data lakes and data warehouses and traditional MDM to cloud data platforms, and really seeing the benefits as well of cloud elastic compute that goes with it. And so we've seen this in the growth of the major cloud providers. But while organizations have overcome the challenges of data scale and really optimized infrastructure with huge levels of investment, the quality challenge remains. So we say big data is no longer the real problem, bad data is. And so seemingly simple targets, like we touched on with Citigroup, gaining that simple view of customers can often seem impossible. The explosion of analytics tools and point solutions around this as well, often in ways can contribute to the problem because it's furthering these incomplete views, and they can become stale quite quickly as the data sources change. So often the data that's actually sitting in so-called mission critical systems like CRMs and ERPs isn't actually trusted by the decision makers that are using it. And so the critical piece that's needed are next generation data management solutions that address speed, scale, and quality through a data ops approach. And so Tamr is part of this new ecosystem of companies where a data ops approach is at its core. So working with lots of Global 2000 customers on their data and analytics initiatives, we've seen that single vendor, single platform data processing approaches largely fail. So they can't keep up really with the advancements from a tech perspective, and often end up, trapping their users in this kind of locked in sunk cost mentality. Working with some of our customers who lead in their industries like Google and Blackstone, we've seen how these next generation solutions really focus on describing how people, process, and tools can come together to deliver successful initiatives. So a true data ops approach promotes agility, continuity, collaboration, interoperability, and scale. And so when you're thinking about the ecosystem as a whole and where we sit, this is where we can be found. So within that sort of modern cloud-based approach, data ops approach to data management. And so what we specifically do within that is naturally MDM. So focusing on the mastered data element. So a lot of our customers have previously made attempts at MDM, but have been burned by unfulfilled promises. So the core goals that MDM promises really apply today more so than ever, right? In terms of unification, in terms of the accuracy needed within the data, in terms of elements like stewardship. But the execution also needs to align with the realities of where data management is today. And so we achieve those core goals of MDM, but we do so with a data ops driven cloud native machine learning approach to how we master. And Richie's going to touch on this in a lot more detail in the demo and kind of bring those concepts to life. When we look at who we're working with, so we're working with many leading enterprises and organizations to tackle core sort of master data challenges. So including J&J, Santander, and Blackstone in the financial services space, from Google to the US Air Force. So all really focused on this problem of creating a unified, accurate data view across mission critical entities. And typically we're taking data from dozens to literally hundreds of ERPs, CRMs, and ad hoc data sources to create this single golden copy view really. And it often sits at the backbone of so many of those digital transformations that are really top of mind across industries at the moment. When we focus on success, we're obviously very focused on timelines. And so with an agile approach, we really focus on measuring that success, in weeks and months, not years. So to put this in context, here's the high level end-to-end flow of where we sit. So, starting out on the left-hand side, at our core, we take disparate data records about an entity. And so we'll walk through this example with Google across multiple systems, where schema or attribute names are labeled differently, where we could have duplicate records, where there are also inconsistencies within the data, and we'll deliver back to you this holistic golden record view. So if we look at the single entity example where Google is our customer, and we're looking to create a holistic view of the data. So we'll walk through the steps. So data curation. So here we're really tackling the schema and entity resolution, recognizing that data isn't always labeled consistently across systems. Often it can be intensified by outside sources, if your company's gone through M&A activity. Customer names within that are also entered inconsistently often. So here in this example, we have Google Mountain View, we have Google Inc. Palo Alto. We also have the parent company listed as Alphabet. And so through Tamr's machine learning approach to mastering, we're able to recognize the matches despite a lot of these underlying inconsistencies. A core part of this process is feedback. So enabling that human input, subject matter input, essentially, because we do take a machine learning approach. And so that human input essentially decides how the data should look. And it's doing it in a scalable way through machine learning. So reducing a lot of that typical sort of manual effort that goes into doing it. So, this Google example, how do we view Google as a customer? How do we want to see them? So we can think about, is it by site location? Do we want to focus on the legal entity or parent company? We have this sort of breadth across customers, but ultimately it comes back to how the data is actually being managed. And then enrichment. So the ability to leverage external data sources to augment your internal data and give you a complete view. So again, with Google, ensuring that the address information is actually correct. So the end result that we're delivering is this holistic view of Google Inc., shown in the format that the business wants it, with trusted data. The most important thing for us is always putting the data to work, right? It's not about the data sitting in the system, it's how you're actually going to go and use it. And so the final step is publishing. So whether it's feeding it to analytical tools like Click or Tableau or Looker, or for more operational use cases, again, thinking of your Oracles, your SAPs, your CRM systems that are used day in, day out by the business. So we always as well try and bring it back to what we're solving at the end of the day. Why does it ultimately matter that you have master data within the business? So our solutions are aligned essentially to the most important business critical data. So customers we're going to focus on in detail today with Richie in the demo, but also other entities like suppliers, parts, and products. And you can think about this data, in terms of the scale of the enterprise impact. So customer data, like literally driving millions of day-to-day decisions for thousands of employees across enterprises, as well as often driving the most important strategic decisions that management are making that are ultimately impacting the bottom line. So we talk about bottom line impact from sort of three elements: driving growth, reducing risk, or lowering cost. We'll kind of come back and revisit these themes as we go. On top of those core business benefits, we also see a large efficiency gain. So we would typically see a 90% reduction in the manual effort for our machine learning approach to master data, compared to a lot of this more traditional solutions that are rules-based and that ultimately end up taking a huge amount of manual effort to manage, and essentially that effort just growing with complexity naturally over time as more data sources are added. For most organizations that we work with, we do often start with customer data, because if you don't understand your customers at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult to understand supply chain or what products need to be built. It just has so many ripple effects really throughout the enterprise that's where we often start, and that's what we're going to focus on for our demo. So jumping into that customer data problem, so it exists, but really not for lack of effort. And when we look at the typical paths of our customers, there's normally sort of two key paths that people go down. The first is a path with IT generally, who are desperately trying to centralize, to put the data into data lakes, attempting rules-based MDM approaches, and really, typically executing very well from an actual sort of centralization perspective, from a unification perspective, but really just not meeting the needs of the business when it comes to quality and classification and governance too within that. So the data is ultimately not usable at the end of the day. And that fuels the second path, right, which is departments within the business often going rogue. So with customer data, we can think about departments like sales, marketing, finance, risk, right? All who are trying to tackle those core data issues within their core systems. So be it CRM cleanups, it could be customer data platforms under marketing, it could be ERP migrations. And it does help plaster over the problem, but often it's avoiding the core issue. And so it furthers this problem of silos growing within the business. It can sometimes, contribute to having more additional disjointed views and additional silos within the business, as sort of these singled out efforts essentially to master the data go stale. And so focusing again on customers, how do we actually approach it? What's different about how we think about customer data specifically? So we really focus on an enterprise view, but scale around how the business actually sees customers, and so how that data is used at the end of the day. And so we will take data from all the core systems that you're used to. We mentioned the CRMs with sales, ERPs with finance, marketing automation tools, the flexibility to support the multi-channel approach to customers that is just so common today, but to do that with a more sort of scalable approach. So from a product perspective, there's kind of 3 core features specific to how we think about customers as well that we really want to kind of emphasize. So the first is a Tamr ID. So this is a unique ID linked to the golden record view that is used across the organization to ensure that the customer is persistently tracked and captured. So the second is hierarchy classification. So again, that ID linking back to the overall customer hierarchy. So we have the flexibility, again, to master based on the view that you want. So whether you want to create a hierarchy that's based on location, for example, or whether you want to do it by ultimate parent. And the third bucket is enrichment. So we have built-in data enrichment in product so that you can enhance your customer view. It's ultimately recognizing that often companies don't have the cleanest data in-house. And so by enriching, you're really ensuring that you're keeping your data accurate and up to date. And when we think about what this boils down to from a benefits perspective, so our data ops driven approach really leads to improved match accuracy. So with lower false positives. So we can think about, the struggles of really achieving high accuracy through those traditional rules-based approaches. Also lower total cost of ownership, which is also so essential when thinking about all of the different sort of touch points and manual effort. And then thirdly, the flexibility to scale and change with the business. So, we're very much partnering for the long term and building as part of a flexible architecture. So that is really critical because it's so often that solutions appear to work in the short term, but when things get changed up by the business, you need that flexibility to stay up to date. All right, so that was enough of the high level overview. What we're here for ultimately is to show you Tamr in action and to demo. So I'm going to hand it over to Richie, who is going to lead us through the demo.
Thanks, Louise. So over the next 15 minutes, you're going to see 3 things. First, we'll show you why mastering your customer data is essential for improving day-to-day decision-making when using CRM tools such as Salesforce. Next, we'll show you how we master our customer data in Tamr using human-guided machine learning. And finally, we'll show you how this mastered data can drive analytics, leading to critical business insights. So yeah, you can stop sharing now, Louise, but I thought this slide was perfect for introducing the demo. To start off with, in the CRM, this demo looks at Shield Inc., a B2B semiconductor company that's trying to capture a 360-degree view of its customers, but struggling to reconcile data sources and tackle data inconsistencies to gain a true customer view. Lenovo is one of Shield Inc.'s most important customers. Shield Inc.'s relationship manager, Anjali, is the manager for the Lenovo US account. And Anjali has an account review meeting with Lenovo in the US to negotiate contracts for the year ahead. She's primarily been dealing with their manufacturing plant in Whitsett, where the relationship appears to be thriving, but now she wants to make sure she can expand the account to other locations. She wants to look for opportunities to upsell in the account hierarchy by sales region and across the corporate parent, and come into the discussion armed with information on product sales so that she can recommend relevant products across the account. As a sales rep, the CRM tool is her natural starting point to find the information she needs. In this case, it's Salesforce. Here she's come to the specific account page for Lenovo in Whitsett, but it's a very limited view. That there's no revenue information flowing through, which means Lenovo Witsit is actually listed as a non-active customer, even though she knows that they're a major customer. Lenovo United States Incorporated is listed as the parent account, so Angelique can actually click into the hierarchy to view what is the full account hierarchy for Lenovo. We can see it's a long list of accounts associated with Lenovo United States in multiple locations, both US and international. Some of these actually, appear to be duplicates. And it's making Angelique's life very hard, actually. It's hard to make out, what the different account locations are. Her original goal was to identify opportunities to cross-sell to other US Lenovo accounts, but she's struggling to see those opportunities amid the mess. She's now concerned about not having basic information for the account review at Witsit, and she's worried about jeopardizing the relationship. The issue here is, of course, messy data in our CRM. But not only that, Shield Inc. is a company that's grown through acquisition, and they've multiple ERPs and CRMs, as well as data on indirect sales received from distributors, sometimes sent in spreadsheets and often extremely messy. So the information Angelique needs exists, but it's scattered across various siloed data sources in business departments, from sales, marketing, finance, and risk. The data's there, but it's completely scattered. The solution to all of this is data mastering. So let's look at the same hierarchy account page, but after Tamr has mastered all of Shield Inc.'s customer data. We can see straight away it's a much cleaner view. We have one instance of Lenovo per location, and we're including the parent hierarchy. It means that as a sales rep, Angelique can now see exactly where the account sits within the wider group and recognize that Fujitsu and Motorola are part of the same Lenovo group. Now, when she clicks into the specific Lenovo Witsit account, she can see much richer information flowing through. She now has visibility on the total run rate revenue of 8.4 million and the average discount rate of 2.7%. She can see the direct sales and the different products that have been purchased, which help Angelique to enter the account negotiation better armed for upsell. All of this data comes from the output of Tamr Customer Mastering. And not only is Tamr providing the complete cleansed set of values, it's also providing a Tamr ID, which is a new universal customer identifier for use across all of Shield Inc.'s enterprise applications. If I click on the Tamr ID, it will bring me through to the Tamr user interface. Here in the Tamr UI, we can see the golden record for Lenovo and Witsit. Golden records are one of the outputs of a Tamr process called customer mastering. Golden records datasets are trusted sources of clean, harmonized, and enriched data that can feed any enterprise application, whether that be CRM systems such as Salesforce or analytical dashboards, which I'll show you an example of later. We can curate golden records in this UI if we like, but by default, each golden record is populated automatically by Tamr with data originating from one or more source records. We can click on the golden record to see those original source records. Here we see 8 original records that make up what we call a cluster. A cluster is a group of records that all represent a single distinct customer. We can see here that these records come from a variety of different source systems. For example, Marketo, Salesforce, SAP. We also have some external data from Dun & Bradstreet. All of these data sources, which were previously siloed, have been brought together to create a unified data set of golden records. And because Tamr gives you the cluster information as well as the golden record, you get the data lineage, which allows you to link the golden data back to the original sources. Shield Inc. tried to do something like this in the past using a traditional MDM tool, but the issue they had is that they weren't able to match these source records together as being the same customer. And so without being able to match them, they couldn't unify them to get the golden record. This is because the traditional MDM tool was heavily based on rules. And this rules-based approach doesn't work very well when there's a lot of data variety. For example, you can see that none of these source system IDs are the same. The names have slight variations, such as Lenovo Co., Lenovo PC. There are abbreviations and misspellings in the street address, and some of the fields are blank as well. Now, you might be able to solve this with rules if it was just 8 records. But we're not creating a golden record only for Lenovo here. We're doing this for every one of Shield Inc.'s 270,000 customers. So the overall scale of data variety here is enormous. And with a traditional approach, you find yourself having to develop hundreds, sometimes thousands of programmed rules to try and handle every possible type of variation. And not only do these rules become unmanageable, but they still don't work. So how does Tamr do this? Well, we know it's tricky for rules, but as human beings, right now, we can look at this data, and by simply glancing at the values, we can confidently say that these are all the same customer. For humans, it's easy. We're just not fast enough. And so on our own, we don't scale. So that's why Tamr uses an approach based on human-guided machine learning. Instead of developing lots of complex rules, you simply give Tamr a few examples, and Tamr will learn to think like you do. So let me show you how Tamr's ML-based customer mastering workflow works so you can understand how it works. The first step is to register your source data sets. Here we see 23 disparate data sets from a variety of different source systems. What they all have in common is that they contain information about customers. So we need to unify all of this data if we're going to have the complete picture. If you look at the tabs across the top, they represent the journey of a customer mastering project. First is the source data sets, as I mentioned. Now, since these data sets come from different source systems, they each have different structures. You can see they have different numbers of attributes, and these attributes are all named differently in each system. So the next step is schema mapping, where we align all our source data into a single unified schema so that everything is lined up and we can start doing comparisons. In the Unified Dataset tab, we can preview our unified data, and then we have the Pairs tab, which is where we start training the machine learning. So let's jump to the Pairs tab to see how this is done. I'm going to filter to my assignments, and then I'm going to select a pair. This is what we call a pair. It's 2 records side by side, and we're teaching Tamr how to automatically identify matching pairs and non-matching pairs. Since Tamr's already received some training, Tamr's able to give an answer. Tamr thinks this is a match. But we can give feedback to Tamr. We can say, yes, you're right, this is a match. Or no, it's actually not a match. And then Tamr learns from this input, and so the ML model becomes more accurate. So who gives this feedback? Well, you can see it's a simple matter of looking at the data and then clicking either match or no match. And so you don't have to be a data scientist or a developer to train Tamr's ML. The best person to give this kind of feedback to Tamr is what we call the subject matter expert, someone who knows the data domain and how this data will be used. In essence, someone who knows about Shield Inc.'s customers. You might ask, why do Shield Inc. SMEs need to be involved at all? Why can't Tamr just provide a black box that does everything? The reason is because customer mastering can be subjective. What Shield Inc. call a single distinct customer, another company might say is 2 different customers. It depends on how they run their business. So although Tamr can provide pre-trained ML models to kickstart the process, SMEs will always have the option to review what Tamr is doing and give feedback to Tamr. This gives Shield Inc. the confidence that Tamr is behaving as they would like it to do. And this is very flexible. Shield Inc., if they like, can run multiple customer mastering models in order to have different views of their customers. You can see why this might be tricky to solve with rules. A lot of the fields don't match, but they have various degrees of similarity. Some of them are very similar, and some of them are blank. You can imagine the number of possible combinations of similarity here is infinite. Trying to write rules to handle all the different cases and not contradict each other is a massive design effort in itself. Tamr's approach is much more agile than the rules-based approach. Instead of having to spend months designing everything up front, you can just send the data straight through Tamr, immediately start looking at the output, and then tune the model by giving simple feedback to Tamr with simple yes, no examples. So coming back to the workflow, Tamr has learned to identify matches and non-matches. And from this, it can group the records into what we call clusters. So this brings me to the final tab where we can review these clusters. You can see, if I remove this filter, you can see Tamr has taken 672,000 records from those 23 raw data sources and has grouped them into 270,000 clusters, where each cluster is a single distinct customer. And if I filter back to my assignments, here we have that Lenovo Witsit cluster again, which is the same cluster we were looking at earlier on the golden record screen. Okay, so now for some analytics. The master data not only feeds operational applications like Salesforce or SAP, but it also feeds analytics that empower key decision-making on the accounts. Angeli's not the only set of eyes on Lenovo. They're a key account, so the CRO and senior management want to be able to review the account performance. Decent account-level analytics were virtually impossible before we had Tamr mastered data. Nobody had trust in the data due to duplicates and poor data quality, and important fields on sales metrics were missing. If Angeli looks at the dashboard now for Lenovo Group, she's now armed with all the key information to enable cross-sell. She can drill down to the account hierarchy to view all accounts within Lenovo Group by pairing an ultimate site location. She can now see that as well as having the Morrisville account for cross-sell, there's also opportunity to expand to Motorola Mobility Chicago. She can also make informed recommendations for what to sell. She now has visibility on the products purchased by the Witsit site, as well as the entire Lenovo corporate family. She knows what product ranges are most popular. There are 3 products that stand out across the Lenovo Group: the Ava 500, the Ava 938, and the HAL 329. So she can use this as a starting point for recommendations with the Morrisville and Motorola Chicago sites. Angeli now has a plan for how to drive account cross-sell and ultimately grow the revenue for the account. If we scroll down further, we get a sense of the breadth of analytics that's been unlocked by this master data. Now, there are lots of great analytic tools out there, but they all share the same problem. Without the correct data, they're useless. Tamr ensures that across the enterprise, all analytical reports, dashboards, and operational systems can be fed with clean, up-to-date, harmonized data. Data that can be used immediately and effortlessly, and more importantly, data that can be trusted. Yeah, so just to recap on what we saw today, we looked at the positive impact that Tamr customer mastering can have on day-to-day operations using CRM tools such as Salesforce. We saw how customer mastering is done in Tamr using a unique agile approach based on human-guided machine learning. We then focused on the analytics that mastering enables, and most importantly, how the data can inform key strategic decisions and ultimately drive significant return for the business. And with that, I'll pass the presentation back to Louise.
Fantastic. Thanks, Richie. All right. So Richie really helped, I think, to bring some of the concepts to life. I think it always makes a difference actually seeing it in product. But we're going to chat on a couple of the features that he touched on in more detail. So, our machine learning approach. So want to look at this in a little bit more detail and kind of explain how we do it compared to kind of the traditional approaches. So what we typically see is this rules-based approach to creating master data. So really often a time-consuming process that relies on iteration of rules. So at its most basic level, you can think of it as the if-then statements. And it tends to be fine, with small amounts of data, you can logically rationalize your way through it. But what we see time and time again is that it breaks down at high volumes of data. So as the amount of rules needed escalates, it really becomes unmanageable. So really this kind of tangled web of rules that ends up taking huge effort from the team to ultimately manage. So our approach automates a significant proportion of that data mastering process. So it enables subject matter experts to provide the input, but input that can ultimately be scaled. So rather than asking them to develop rules for every possible data iteration, it's really focusing on those high impact opportunities that Richie brought us through. And so we really focus on this point, but time matters. And so it is ultimately boiling down to master data in weeks and months instead of the years that we typically see take through the traditional approaches, really to get things properly up and running. I think another concept that we want to touch on again is the hierarchies that we look at. So Richie in the demo talked about this example with Lenovo. Here again, we've kind of built it out just to show you kind of the image of what it looks like from an Apple perspective. So looking at those messy underlying records and thinking about all the different ways that you can classify the relationship. And so we typically see sort of three common approaches, though it does vary among our customers. So sales hierarchies, they're often based on location or by sales channel. Financial hierarchies, there you could be thinking about different measures focused on credit terms and contract terms for how you want to think about who is a customer. And then the third, so the corporate hierarchies. So their information can be critical, like who are the subsidiaries or headquarters or ultimate parents. And so thinking through the sort of legal identifier for who the customer is. And so our flexibility with hierarchies, it really comes down to a few of our sort of core approaches. So, that machine learning approach that we keep coming back to is really core to that flexibility from a mastering perspective, because we're leveraging the team's input based on how they manage. Our location and sort of site-based approach, which is a very common across our customers, it also allows them to take advantage of our geospatial capabilities as well. Another common approach is corporate hierarchies, and there again, taking advantage of our enrichment capabilities really enhances that. So the enrichment part of it as well is a really important aspect. So we have built-in data enrichment capabilities, including third-party enrichment services. So for example, US address validation through USPS, a phone validation through the phone carriers, and URL enrichment through Bing. So our data standardization capabilities include normalizing country codes for consistencies. So simple things that can be impactful, for example, consistently showing the United States as USA. And it can be a game changer for messy data, particularly where there's a lack of trust in the underlying data. And so we started with this theme of, the issue is really about bad data, not big data today. And I think looking at the output of graph databases helps bring that point to life. So, visualizations are really only as good as the data behind it. So in this example, we're looking at the data set for an organization, this case coded as DabJam, to empower know your customer ownership and relationships. So on the left-hand side view, in the before view, there are 15 distinct entities that are unique, captured separately within the database, no clear relationship established. On the right, we have mastered customer entities and built relationships. So we're showing here how the view changes post-mastering when you've established the core underlying connections between those records that were before treated separately. And so it's fine when we show it in a simple example like this, where we've isolated the entity, but you can imagine thinking about that left-hand view when it's mixed in with not thousands, but millions of other records. It's becomes a nightmare to try and figure out what the actual relationship is. And so how do we actually generate value? Why does all of this matter? At our core, it's about enabling faster, cleaner, and more robust data to drive decisions for the business. So the ML and data ops approach really does change what's possible from a time efficiency perspective and from an accuracy perspective. And so boiling it down at the three core levels, we're driving business outcomes and ultimately coming down to the bottom line to try and increase profits, to improve efficiency, and thirdly, to reduce infrastructure costs. So maybe sort of quickly running through them in reverse. So reducing infrastructure costs, often here we're looking at the maintenance costs of databases and platforms incurred across the enterprise. And so this goes from sort of the large scale project costs to indirect costs needed to reconcile inconsistencies across systems and during system migrations. We often also help reduce the cost of third-party data providers. There's improved efficiency, which often I think for our sort of core users within the data org is the benefit that they get most excited about, really reducing all that time spent on manual effort. And then our primary bucket, so the number one and where the value really comes from, it's about how the business is using the data. And so here we'll break it down into the real drivers. So either driving revenue, decreasing costs, or reducing risks. And there's nuance here depending on naturally the entity we're looking at. So here for customer data, we've listed some of the core impacts that the data tends to drive, aspects like upsell and cross-sell opportunities within an account. Really, really difficult if you don't have a unified customer view to know what products you could be recommending, how to approach the account to expand, because you're lacking the information, often sometimes in embarrassing levels where you can't tell the customer about their existing exposure unless you have that unified view. But also aspects like targeted marketing, increasing sales and marketing efficiency as well. And then risk, which tends to be a really prevalent focus within our financial services customers. And so really boiling that back to some of the customers that we're working with and thinking through that customer data. I kind of said that it is customer specific, and I think the customer data example brings it to life. So here in our examples, you can see that the focus could be from know your customer, KYC regulation in finance with Scotiabank, for example, customer experience in manufacturing, also our Toyota experience, and aspects like distributor data, sales, different sales channels, and improving sales lead matches for analog devices. So really a breadth within that of kind of how customer data specifically is sort of impacting our customers. So I think as a final note, before we'd love to jump into some quick Q&A and any questions that you have, please do enter them in the chat. It's always our favorite part of the session is getting to hear your feedback. One element that we wanted to mention before jumping into that is that we have this offer at the moment in terms of sponsoring your first either customers, whether it's customers or organizations, so B2B, or supplier mastering projects that we're taking on that first project. I think we have conviction that we can add value very quickly and sort of prove it out with that initial sort of use case. And so we want to make sure that you're able to take that leap to get started with a cloud native MDM approach. So if it's something that would interest you, if you'd like to discuss sort of more specifically for use cases that you have in mind and see a demo, please do follow up with us. We'd love the chance to chat with you. So with that, I think we'll move to Q&A.
Well, thanks very much, Louise and Richie. Excellent demo. There's a lot to take in there. And how does this compare to someone like it's obviously enterprise class, someone like an Informatica? How do you kind of see yourselves stacking up there?
Yeah, I'd probably put Informatica in the category of those traditional MDM vendors. There's some good tech there, and the idea of MDM has been popular for a lot of companies, but what we found from speaking to a lot of these companies is that they've underestimated the amount of work involved in a traditional MDM implementation. And actually a lot of MDM projects fail because of this. In order for them to work, they often involve large teams of people, huge planning effort, implementation periods that take longer than expected. The Tamr approach is quite different. The human-guided machine learning workflow allows Tamr to be very agile and very fast. Instead of spending months planning, you can start looking at the results almost immediately and then quickly iterate from there. So yeah, that's what it's about looking at the results straight away and then iterating. And agility is very important because a lot of the times you don't know what to expect until you see the output.
We have a couple of other questions, and I want to be sensitive to to kind of having enough time to get ready for the next one. But with regard to that that last screen you showed, Louise, with the idea of how to engage in a trial effectively, I thought that was very good of you to share. I'm curious, with regard to deployment of Tamr, how long of a process are we looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. Richie, do you want to kind of chat through it from what you've seen? I mean, typically we are talking about a much shorter timeline, which I think we've hit on, but Richie, you can feel free to expand.
Yeah, I mean, so I think Louise mentioned, our three big cloud partners, which is Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. If you're on one of those three, you can have a Tamr up and running in minutes. Okay. Some of our customers prefer to have a SaaS model where we host everything for them, and that's an option too, and that's even easier. But really, getting Tamr up and running, it's a matter of minutes, and then getting all the data in and building and training an ML model and looking at the results. We're talking maybe a few weeks.
Interesting.
To add on to what Rishi said, and I think another element as well is really getting access to the data. So I think from the enterprise side, we're not talking about trivial systems. We're really thinking enterprise wide, and that often is a hurdle that our customers have to sort of overcome internally, and many do quickly. But I think it's the realities of taking on enterprise scale data challenges is that sometimes their own internal challenges as well of gaining access to data can be real.
Well, and do you help them with that? Help them think that through in terms of what data they seem to have, ready access to, and maybe others that they need a little bit of help with?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Within our team, we really focus on kind of being sort of thought leaders from a data ops perspective. We have, great sort of engineering talent, and I think they often act as sort of key advisors on that of trying to think through how to get started, because often you don't want to sort of take on sometimes the most sort of difficult edge case within it, right? It's often about figuring out what you can get access to in a time efficient manner and building from there and working from there. But we as a company try and take on every data situation, no matter how messy it is. That's kind of our approach is always to kind of work through it, no matter sort of what the incumbent challenges are that have built up with legacy systems.
Well, Louise, Richie, thank you very much for sharing the Tamr value proposition and the story there. It's certainly compelling, and we would encourage all of our viewers to learn more. And so we will catch you later. We'll certainly be covering more of what Tamr's up to here at Solutions Review. But again, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks. Well, that's it. We're off and running. One demo down, two more to go. We'll be back at the top of the hour with our next one, which is a data catalog company called Alation. Thanks.
Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data management and analytics.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome back to Data Demo Day. Today we're taking an inside look at three of the top data technologies available to you. For this Data Demo Day, we invited a range of solution providers, each offering a unique value proposition across master data management, data catalogs, and data analytics. And next up is Alation. And if you don't know Alation, you should. They are the first company to bring a data catalog to market. The Alation Data Catalog combines machine learning and human collaboration to change the way people find, understand, trust, use, and reuse data. More than 200 organizations leverage the Alation Data Catalog right now, and we are joined by Nick Colley, a sales engineer at Alation. Nick, thanks for being here.
Hey, Doug. Nice to be back.
Yes, indeed. We did this together back in December, I think. Had a lot of great feedback about your presentation, and I'm excited to get an update and also let all of our new viewers see more about the Alation platform.
Yeah.
Before we get started, though, we talked about this last time, and I thought it was really interesting, the fact that you were an Alation customer before you joined Alation. Can you share a little bit about that that move and the thought behind it?
Yeah, I kind of feel like one of those club sponsors where it's like I'm not only a member, but a work for the company type thing. But yeah, I was a data science team lead and a member of the corporate data governance board for a large multinational organization where as a data scientist, I got tired of spending 3 months ramping up on projects and ramping up on data to the corporate data governance board of where do we begin? Like, we've got this 150-page document of our governance. What? So I led the effort of going out and finding the a data catalog to bring in and to implement. And I really liked Alation so much that I ended up joining them. So the proof was in the pudding for me.
Well, you're the perfect person to present an overview and get into a demo. So I'm going to take a step back. I'll come back in 35 or 40 minutes or whenever you've gotten through what you'd like to show, and we'll do some Q&A. But otherwise, have at it and let us know all about Alation.
Yes, definitely. So there is some professorial stuff that I used to teach for 5 years. And whenever I get into what is even a data catalog, right? I like to try to take it from a broad scope because data catalog can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that can be, whoops, I just swapped to the wrong display. And then I'll share my screen and we're good. So, what is even a data catalog? So today we're going to be kind of going through a bunch of different things. And what is even Alation, right? Alation is all about empowering a curious world, and a rational world. We're all about making it very easy for you to go and whether you're an analyst to, the CDO, to empower the data workers, the knowledge workers to go and find information, empower the data users to leverage what they need to be leveraging. And to do that, you're going to have to do a data culture shift. And this was something for us as a customer that we knew we needed to do. And there's some really cool stories I'll talk about there. But to get to a data culture shift, you have to do a couple different things. And I'll be honest, this is a marketing slide, yay! But there's a lot of truth to this because when you start looking at doing a data catalog and doing data culture shift, it's how can you make it easy for people to go out and find the data and understand what it means? How can you go out and improve the data literacy? So it's, proper interpretation. Is this the right report to be looking at? And then data governance, where it's giving them the autonomy to go use the data where it makes sense, but knowing what's expected of them, right? And that's where our vision really lands when it comes to having a data catalog. So now to the, what is even a data catalog? The high level of this is it's a repository of your metadata across your information sources that allows you to search, collab, and curate. So when I talk about information sources, I'm talking about your structured data, your unstructured data, your BI reports, your flat files, to even documentation like your policies and things like that. Bringing that all together to make it a cohesive search experience. So anything about your data is going to live there. And we do this through a couple different means. We approach it from a platform where in order to enable data governance, we're going to or privacy, risk, compliance, analytics, or cloud transformation. We have a lot of things below that that are enabling it, empowering it. In each release, we get more powerful. But enough of slides. I really don't like slides. I just want to kind of give a level set. And what we're going to do is, before I get into talking about data cataloging from a governance perspective, for example, I want to level set and show it from an analyst perspective. Because if we go back to that data culture shift, it's enabling people to go and find the data, right? So we're going to go into that, and we're going to see how we can empower your end users, get better decisions faster, and build that trust in data a lot faster. So in the words of that epic movie from the 1990s, Jurassic Park, welcome to Alation. Yes, I'm also a giant dork. Again, Alation's all about making it easy to go in and find it. We're going to plug in and find to your information sources, your data, your flat files, your queries. I'll talk more about that in a minute. To your documentation, to conversations. We'll circle back on that, and your BI. And what that's going to enable is a cohesive search experience. Right here, we're on the landing page. This is where your users will start your journey, or their journey. They can come in, see any quick links to the different departments, to then seeing what they've recently visited if they have, or different filters on that, as well as like embedded information that you can customize this page and say, hey, this is important to be aware of. And if I'm a new analyst to the company, and this was something that was very beneficial about Alation for me as a data scientist, data science team lead, is a new employee could come in and say, okay, I want to see information around the streaming data, right? And right away, we're already getting information about the data getting filtered by a domain. Cool. This is starting to point me in the right direction. I can also come over here and search using natural language, and Alation's going to bring back the top most relevant objects. But if I want to dive deeper, I can go in and I can hone my search. I can filter based on like different databases or flags, or if there's been things that's been tagged with like PII, for example. I can also come across and search against the data, documentation, BI reports, and more. But whenever you're a new employee, the thing I always recommend with new employees is to start with BI reports, because BI reports are very powerful. That means that someone has taken the data, transformed it into information, that information into knowledge, and knowledge into actions, right? So it's a good way to start that absorption process for ramping up. And here you can see customer segment, and we get a couple of reports already coming back. If I dive into one of these reports, you saw it, there was a giant stop sign. I'm a curious person. Why is there a giant stop sign on this report? And we can see that this report has been deprecated. Well, why has it been deprecated? This report is based on our old segmentation model. Okay, the dashboard based on the new model is located here. So within just a few searches, or within one search, and just, I landed on a BI report, thought I should use that. Nope, need to use this report instead. That's powerful, because now we're guiding the users to things they should use. My non-technical director would go into Alation, find a BI report, and say, hey, Nick, here's a report. Can you go modify this by 20% to, make it what I need? Yes, because it sped up my delivery time for him. It gave me more of an idea of what he was looking for, and I wasn't having to redo work, right? If you look at the different types of waste, duplication of effort is one of those types. Coming across, I can see that there is a warning on this data. I can also see where this report is located. If I come down here, I can see, hey, please refer to the PII data policy prior to using this data. Oh, okay. So what we just did there for that new analyst is we notified them when they found the report or the data that they're looking at with a simple click, what's expected of them, what policies are attached to this data. And I'll talk more about this when we go into our governance talk in just a few minutes. But anytime you think about governance, you have to think about it. How is it going to be consumed by the end user? And in Alation, we try to make this as easy as possible. I can also see that the person who wrote this endorsed it, so it's her vote of trust. I can come over to our PI data policy. I can read through it and see what's expected of me, if there's any things that I need to be aware of. And I can also see it's part of a policy center. So that's interesting. I might want to go research that later. Coming down, I can see a description. I can see a preview. I can see the fields, the expressions. We've deployed Alation at over 300 customers now. I've seen expressions super complex, but what's great about these is that it will also show you if these expressions are being utilized in other reports. So now you can start going, wait, this is not how we measure revenue or some random KPI. I can see where the data is coming from. And more importantly, Alation is going to show you out of the box automatically the lineage from the BI report to the source tables and where those source tables are getting their information from. This is automatic out of the box. And this is really powerful because now I'm not having to guess to see where this Tableau report came from or having to go into Tableau to then look at the connection information and see what tables, right? I'm getting it all right here. And if I click on one of these tables, I can scroll down and see, okay, here's some customer demographics. I can open this up and get taken right to the table and start looking at what this data is describing. So let's take a step back. Think about your new hiring process. Think about you bringing on your new data scientist, your new analyst, right? eBay, for example, one of our customers, they went from a 18-month onboarding process for data scientists. That was their own metric that they had, where they said a customer was, or that their data scientist was ramped up, down to a couple of months, just because of how easy Alation made it. And so now think about that, utilizing the data scientist more, making it more effective. In addition, Salesforce, and I can attest to this too personally as a team lead. They have data scientists and analysts creating reports by in that first week, where prior it would take months to, months to get to that point, right? Okay, enough belaboring. So we're on a table now. What are we looking at? Again, we can see the breadcrumb trail. I can watch this data. Watching is really cool because then it notifies me if there's changes to this object, right? I can come down and see there's a warning. It makes sense that the PI compliance policy is attached to this data because it was attached to the BI report that it's pulling from. Makes sense. Again, I can see description, but I can also see top users. Well, if I have questions, maybe I should ask one of these top users. Okay, if there was no description here, I can also come over here and ask them for help and say, hey, describe this. So again, this is powerful because now we're breaking down data silos and leveraging the crowdsource mentality to get this information out and enable others to find that data. If I have a question on the data, I can also come over here and ask a question over here on the conversations tab. And this is really good because it's enabling people to say, hey, what's going on here? And instead of me just emailing, for example, Doug, the host, saying, hey, you know about this data? And he responds back and goes, yes, it's da, 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 da. We just created 2 data silos, right? Well, now these conversations are directly attached to this table so other people can go in and find it. One of our customers in pharmaceuticals, 80% of their analyst questions are now being answered through conversations. So imagine, or think about that. Where's your time for your analysts being spent in trying to answer those questions? How can we simplify that to get them to their insights faster? Coming across, we'll be able to see the columns. We can show you, the physical column name, the business column name, and then a little robot head. And if I mouse over it, Alation automatically generated this title. Oh, that's right. So this is something that's really cool because what Alation is going to do is it has machine learning built in. And this machine learning is going to be leveraging the documentation you bring into Alation and using that knowledge to make educated guesses at what does CSTMR mean? What does DMS mean, right? And it's going to use that knowledge to then start giving business names to your data objects so that people that aren't familiar with their nomenclature for naming things can easily find it. Also speeds up your your stewarding efforts as well. We'll show you your types, but I can also see there's some popularity here. Well, that's fascinating. And this is something that's really unique to Alation because we're going to be able to show you popularity of what is being used not only at the column level, but we'll be able to zoom out and show you the most popular schemas, most popular tables within that schema as well. and I'll talk more about that in the next bit, but it helps identify critical data elements that are being used across the org. We'll be able to see sample data. We'll be able, steward can come in and easily mark these things as sensitive, so we're not revealing sensitive data, and there's also some automation we can build around that. So to answer the question, yes, we can do both those. The question is tagging automatic or user-defined? Yes to both. A steward can go in and mark it as sensitive, and or you can use some automation rules. Coming across, we're going to be able to show you how people are filtering the data, how people are joining on the data. Well, why do we want to see that? As an analyst, this is beneficial because it's now empowering me to see what people are filtering on most frequently. Okay, so this is how people are leveraging it, right? I can also see how people are joining on it. So if I'm going to interact with this data, maybe I should do a join to experiment and figure out what's going on there. Again, we'll automatically show you that lineage. To then seeing some queries. And it looks like someone's already posted a query here where I can go in and see some customer demographic data. Okay, it's been endorsed a couple of times, so this looks like this is a trusted report. I can see that there's a glossary around customer demographics as well. Well, let me run this report and see what data we get back. Oh, it's asking me what kind of users we're looking for. So I can search for like inactive or active users, right? When I click get results, it's using my database credentials to go out and pull back that data to give me an idea of what's there. Is this a good report to leverage? I can also go back into this and say, you know what? I want to write a query off this. And this is where, from a data consumer perspective, this is powerful. Because what Alation has done is it's taken the data catalog. Think of that like your Google Maps, right? Where you're like, okay, Google, I'm hungry. And Google's going to go out and give you a list of restaurants to go eat at. Well, think of Compose as your turn-by-turn directions that are going to guide the analysts, the data scientists, the data consumers on how to use the data, best practices, and leveraging the work that other people have already done. Here I'm already starting with report that I can go in and start modifying, right? So I can, because this is a shared query, I can go in and edit it. I can mouse over and see, hey, warning, before you use this, apply the PI policy. I can see the data documentation also at my fingertips. So again, we're speeding up that consumption time, that research time that would normally be needed. But we can also see what is expected of me. And this is where you're probably starting to get a sense of this is data governance, but done differently. It's active data governance, where we're putting your policies in line with the data. All right, so that's what it looks like from the analyst perspective, where we just within a few minutes, literally like 10 minutes, you saw how we can easily go in and empower your end users, help them get better decisions faster. Talked about how like one of our customers in pharmaceuticals, 80%, right? Another one is Forrester did an independent study. So I qualify this because I recognize I'm a sales engineer, right? Forrester did an independent study and found that analysts using Alation were 70% more effective at finding the data they needed to use and to actually start building reports than without. That is massive time savings and increase in productivity from the end users, whether data scientists, data analysts, right? Because now they know what the data means, they can start using those policies in play. But let's take a look at the other side of that coin. Again, if we're talking about shifting a data culture, we want to empower the end users to go out and find the data, make it easy for them. But what does it look like to actually govern it from the Alation side? So what you're going to be seeing here is a way to prioritize stewardship efforts, see the active data governance, which I kind of already teased about, and get better visibility into the process. And something that's really unique that we're seeing, it's not unique, but something that we're seeing in when we talk about like data governance is seeing a new trend is the term of offensive and defensive data governance, where defensive is like, how do I apply these standards across the data? Where offensive is, how can we use this data to generate revenue, right? And you already started seeing some of that offensive capabilities just through the analyst view of helping them go out and find the data that they need and knowing what is the right data to be leveraging. Now we'll take a look at more of the defensive side of that. So coming over here to apps, you can see Compose, which is our SQL editor. You can also see our glossaries. And if we look at data governance at a holistic view, there's a lot of complexity there because it can be a very, what's the word? 150-page document that you have to figure out how to implement, right? So the first thing is, let's get that documentation into Alation. That was the first thing we did as a customer of Alation. We got that 150-page document, plopped it into Alation. We actually built a policy center so that users can go in and see what it is. But once we got it in there, then we can do some tagging to get it out there. So we can see all those different policies. There's the PII policy, for example, that we talked about. And it's very easy to go in and see what the process is. We can see when it was last updated. We can see who the reviewers are. And if you notice at the top here, this PII policy is going through some edits and is waiting for a review. So Alation has a built-in workflow system that you can set up to go in and have, if you've got a KPI that you need to get governed, right? And you say, this is how corporate defines this measurement. You can set that up. And a lot of the things that when you start talking about workflows, you're going to start thinking about, oh man, this is going to take like 4 months just to get one KPI approved, right? How is that effective? How is that beneficial? Well, with Alation, what we have found is with our workflow system, our customers are getting the same level of fidelity as that 4-month process, but down to a couple of hours because of some of the things that we built in our thought process design behind it. So you're going to get that same level of development and that you would with a longer process, but shorter. So it's all about being agile and responding. As you may also notice, Alation has multiple glossaries. So as a user of Alation, you can have as many glossaries as you want. So if you need to have different departments to have their own glossary, because they measure that one KPI differently than the other one, we've seen it, you can support that. So now those users can come in there, and when they search for streaming data in this example, they can see here's the specific definition for streaming. But what's also neat is we talked about earlier when we were in the analyst view, how Alation is looking at popularity of all the way down to the call moment, right? We also talked about how we have machine learning built in. So what we're going to do is, based on that knowledge, we're going to start recommending to you different terms based on your data abbreviations and suggest glossary terms so that you can enable the users, the data users, and get that knowledge out there. You have full curation where you can go in, you can specify the amounts, you can like how's the abbreviation, you can add or remove, and you can see the objects attached to it. And what's great is I can go in and add this as a new glossary term, or I can go in and add this to an existing glossary term. So if I create a new one, it's going to ask me where do I want to plop it in, and I could let's do business glossary. And right off the bat, it's going to format it the way the business glossary is formatted. I can now start documenting this, but I can also see all these objects. Well, Nick, how does this help me in my governance efforts? Well, this is automation, because the moment this glossary term is associated to these objects, this glossary term is automatically pushed out across your data catalog so that end users, or analysts, your data scientists, your data consumers will know how you define amount or how you define these things. So, and you can go in and you can search on those glossary terms as well. So if you know you need to start associating glossary terms to tables or whatnot, you can filter and find it and then associate it. Well, how does it automate? Anytime a new column table comes in where it meets these abbreviations, it will automatically add that glossary term to it. Think about that. How are you currently notifying your end users, of what this means? We also have full access control, so you can lock down who can see it, who can interact with it, as well as setting up the workflow. We try to make it as business friendly as possible to go in. As you saw, it's very easy to go in, search by domains. It's very easy to manage domains. We give you a very easy UI, go in, create, go in, start adding. We try and make it as simple as possible for the stewarding efforts. But if I'm a steward, where do I begin? If I'm the enterprise, where do I begin? Well, let's start there at the enterprise level. This is the dashboard that I nerd out about all the time. If we're tracking popularity across the data catalog, right? Across all the information assets that you have plugged into Alation, then we're going to show you by popularity, by system, as you can see, multiple different systems are plugged in, where you need to begin your efforts in governing. And governance doesn't necessarily just mean documentation, right? This is a financial transactions table that is getting utilized the most. Is this the right table users should be using? Popularity, right or wrong, people are using it. What's your current process for identifying critical data elements and knowing where to steward it, right? This is something that's very unique to Alation, and it's an automated dashboard for your governance council, for your governance team to go in and go start here, pass go, collect your $200 of data governance money, right? You can assign it to groups, like if you have a governance council, or you can assign it to specific users to go take it over. And you can filter by object as well. Backing up, if we show you the enterprise view of what it looks like to manage Alation, what about me as an individual steward, right? Helps if I actually click. Well, we're going to give you a stewardship dashboard. So I'm logged in as Sally Stewart, as you can see right here. And we can see out of the 44 objects she's a steward of, she's at about a 54% curation rate. Okay, so got some work to do. I can see what the catalog activity has been. So what objects I am a steward on that have had changes to it. Excuse me. As well as seeing, I've got a couple of tasks that have been assigned to me that I need to go in and go work through. Okay, so we're getting some prioritization. We're seeing what's been modified, what's been tracked. But I can also go into my curation progress. And again, by popularity, by object, here's where I need to begin my efforts as a steward to make sure that people are using this. Do I need to deprecate this table and point them to the right table to be using? Right? And this is where we're going to make that your data governance a lot simpler. And I get this is a well curated demo. We've implemented at over 300 customers at this point. A lot of the use cases are around governance that we see, and we see environments that look more robust than this and a lot of automation, and they're able to get these insights faster and start working through these a lot faster. And I'll show you some customers and use cases in just a minute. We're going to be able to show you catalog activity, so what's been modified at the curation level, as well as physical changes. So has a column been added or dropped, for example? We're going to show and track that for you so you can easily go in and leverage it. The other thing that we can do is we have automation rules engine that doing a quick time check. It's very easy to set up, but what it can do is it will go out and search the data, the metadata And you can build rules and then set actions for it to do specific things when certain criteria are met. So if you're trying to identify PII data, right, or you're trying to identify CCPA data, and where that data could potentially live, you would use one of our catalog sets to go out, find that, start tagging it, automatically assign a steward, and then that will get prioritized on their dashboard automatically. So stewards will know where to begin their efforts. Lastly, let me pull up a different instance real fast. I'm going to nerd out since we're doing pretty good on time. Oh, let me get a different environment. I set this environment up for y'all for this demo, but I didn't have time to set this up. And this is actually a good comment to talk about. Well, Nick, you're showing me something that's really great. Is this going to take 10 months for me to roll this out? No, it's not going to take 10 months. We can do, I've installed on customers in about 2 hours. We do on-prem, our cloud services, coming soon to a future release near you. Like soon. But I'm not product, so I can't really say too much. So we can install on-prem. We already talked about cloud. It takes 2 hours to install. Connecting to data source takes about an hour. Everything's done through the user interface. The reason why it takes generally an hour to connect is firewalls. That's my biggest pain point. Just make sure you notify your networking team. Hey, we're going to be doing this. Cool, we're good to go after that. So I showed you from the enterprise where to begin. I showed you from a stewardship how you prioritize your own work, right? Well, how can we track these efforts? Alation ships out of the box with what's called Alation Analytics. This is, I'm going to inception you for a second, metadata about your metadata. That is to say, how people are using the catalog, whether they're data curious to your governance people. You'll be able to track at the enterprise level across all of the information sources you bring into Alation and see how your governance program is operating, how the catalog is being consumed. We ship with some dashboards out of the box so you can dive in. You can drill down to time ranges, specific users, and it's everything from like where are people navigating to what's being flagged, who's executing queries where, what's the most popular articles that people are consuming. This is a cool one. It's total visits versus unique visitors. Is it the same people visiting the same thing over again, or is it that's for visits, or is it all unique people, right? To then seeing popular queries and a lot more. So we ship with a bunch of these out of the box, and any one of these you can go right into Compose with and query against. Cool, Nick. What can I do with it if I want to write my own stuff? Awesome. We support that, and you can plug your BI tool directly into it. So Tableau, Power BI, whatnot. You can bring that in, connect it, so then you can start tracking at a, again, enterprise level, how your catalog's performing in your governance efforts. The normal things that we see people using Alation Analytics for is like when they first deploy, the first thing they want to get their hands around is what PII data do we have? So they'll create a workflow and they'll track the workflow progress through Alation Analytics so they can see, oh, here's all the fields that have been identified having, potentially PII. They're in review. How many have been marked as completed review, no PII versus contains PII, right? So you can start tracking that over time to see, are these policies effective? You'll be able to track what people are querying against. So if you're trying to move people away, again, bringing in data catalogs is all about culture shift. If you want people to move away from using a specific table because they thought it was the best table, you'll be able to track and see who's still querying that table, so you can start guiding them proactively to say, use this data instead. That feature is coming out in this next release. And then you'll be able to come in, there's an example, and we'll also give you a bunch of other queries where you can track a lot more stuff. Yeah, so I've covered a lot, but I also don't want to belabor the point here. why do customers buy Alation? If you're looking at a data governance tool, if it's us, it's not us, totally fine. Please take away these 5 points. These are 5 things I wish I had known when I was in your chair. You want something for, you want a data catalog that has intelligence. You want a data catalog that encourages and builds collaboration, because we want to break down data silos. One of our customers actually generated a whole new line of business because of collaboration, and they were able, it was an insurance company, and they were able to create a new windmill insurance because they realized that they didn't have it, and they were able to collaborate with their team members to figure out, oh, we don't have this, built the KPIs to get business to invest in it, and it's been very good for them. So we want to talk about, offensive governance. Boom. Guided navigation. We were, how can the catalog guide users to using the right information? Active governance, how can we take that 150-page document and make it living, breathing, and working for you instead of you having to work for it? And broad connectivity. If you're getting a data catalog, it needs to have a bunch of connectors, right? Otherwise, why are you getting it? So those are, like, I speak generally because I wish I'd known these things to look for. Like, very happy with Alation. They're still a customer of ours. But I just wish I'd known this because this will help inform my decision a little bit quicker. But don't take my word for it. We literally created the category for data catalogs back just a little bit ago, and we're the in the top right quadrant across the board, highly recognized. And then who's using us? We've got companies across all verticals. Well, Nick, we're in this random vertical that you've never heard about. Awesome. Are you still facing data tribal knowledge? Do you still have to govern it? Do you have to be defensive? Do you have to be offensive about it? Offensive, sorry, not offensive data. And so forth, right? Or do you want to enable your analysts to be more productive, right? Pfizer is a customer of ours. They were the one, that's actually the company that their analysts 80% improvement for finding or answering their own questions, right? To governance, from American Family Insurance, US Foods, Ancestry, to video game companies, Riot Games, data privacy, GDPR, risk compliance, Daimler, that was my previous company, to digital transformation. We're going to help you enable and get you through there. And we're also ISO certified. But yeah, this is a great time to see if there's any questions, comments, profound statements, and go from there.
That was great, Nick. Thanks a lot for the overview. I had a couple of questions. We have others, but I get to go first.
Oh, bring it, Doug.
Well, actually, with regard, so you mentioned culture and cultural shift, which I think is kind of an interesting topic, certainly to us here at Solutions Review, but also I think as people try to think about something like a data catalog, it may be a term they're not familiar with. And also, I mean, quite frankly, with everything that's happened over the past year, a lot of people have maybe forgotten some of the massive data challenges that are still out there looming, like GDPR and data privacy and so forth. But I'm curious about kind of where you, if they were to think about a kind of competing or companies that they can relate to, they can relate Alation to, what would be a couple of the companies that you're competing with?
Ooh, competing with. So we're seeing a lot of competition from, I mean, it's data catalog. You can go look at any one of those, Gartner, Forrester. You're going to see our name alongside Calibra, Informatica, in the top right quadrant, right? But there's a lot of unique differentiators, like with our automation, with giving you the view into data, the automatic identification of critical data, where they don't. So
Right.
we're going to be able to give you that insight. And it's also about the philosophy of the data catalog. We built the data catalog as an endless productivity tool to begin with, because our philosophy is, again, empowering a data curious and rational world, right? To do that, we need to get the data curious to data experts onto a platform to find and understand what that data means, right? So then when you apply the governance, they want to continue using it, right? So we have companies that as soon as you get hired, you get an Alation key so that you can log in and start finding that data. That's how effective they found it.
Well, so thank you for that. I got a couple that are coming from the audience. One is, how does Alation work with data in various sources such as SAP, Sybase, IQ, VSAM, Oracle, and Access?
Great question. So I'm going to kind of give a very generic answer, and what we'll do is you can reach out to us after this. The generic answer is we have over 80 different connectors. A lot of those that you listed, we have connectors for. We don't have an out-of-the-box connector for it. We have methods to bring that data in so you can still catalog and still govern it. And it's very easy to plug and play with Alation. Again, it's all done through the user interface. So we try and make that as easy and painless as possible. Again, generally over 80 different connectors. I'm giving that answer because what generally will happen is I'll say, oh, we have these connectors, and then someone will pop up and go, what about these? So I'm trying to prevent the popcorning effect. Just reach out, we'll be in touch, and we can get more specifics about the connector types.
Excellent. Another one, is the tagging automatic or user defined?
Yes, great question. So as we showed earlier, the tagging can be both automatic through our rules engine, or can be user defined at the steward level, or as you know, at the user level. So that's really cool because end user, data curious person can go in and flag the data saying, hey, I saw this, and it will immediately notify the stewards and anyone watching the data saying, hey, this happened. So you get that collaborative feel in there.
Another question, does Alation have automated compliance that helps protect customers' data?
So this one I have found means a couple different things, Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous. So I'm going to give we have methods to help you with that. We have methods to help you identify that. But I would like to understand more of the business case of what you're trying to solve there, and then I can give you a more specific answer. I'm not trying to be coy, but I've seen that question mean a couple different things, and I don't want to give a wrong answer.
Question with regard to the ISO certified slide, which they'd like to know more about. Which ISO certifications? I think they didn't have a chance to read the slide.
Oh yeah, sorry. ISO 27001 certification. So it's all about security. We take our customers' data very our customers' data security very importantly. That's a mouthful. But we're also in the process of getting new certifications because we want to prove to our customers that we're not just going to put some marketing lingo that says we're compliant, but that we're actually doing the work to get the certs.
Well, and so I'm curious about your experience as a customer with regard to collaboration across users. So, you know, you went through the implementation process. How did you find it internally with regard to collaboration?
We did a very specific rollout, and something that really made me happy about being a customer of Alation is we've all been with a vendor, right? Where it's like the sales will, swoon you and cuddle you, and you're like, oh, I feel loved, and then they disappear, right? You're like, what? Alation was there after purchase, partnered with us, and worked with us on a rollout strategy so that we weren't doing this alone. It was effective. So the way we built the collaboration is we did a technical implementation, make sure everything was connected, DBAs were happy, to then doing a business implementation. Once we got all that done, we did what was called a data day. And the data day was powerful. If you're not doing a data day, I highly recommend it. And it's all about enabling the data curious to data experts, right? we did intro to SQL, advanced SQL, intro to BI, advanced BI, right? And then we did a keynote. Here's Alation. Why do I care about Alation? So we started explaining to them like how it's going to benefit. The governance team held a competition for like best documentation on a table and article to kind of get a gold standard what the consumer needs. And then we rolled it out. We started after that with about 250 users, and then just started seeing growth naturally hit just because people are like, oh, you need this data? Check this out. And just, it was very powerful. So the collaboration aspect, it grew naturally because people were answering questions for each other, and having the top users identified sped up that process.
So one final question with regard to the solution curious. I know we've been talking about the data curious. How does somebody get started exploring Alation at potentially a more detailed level?
Great question. Actually, I don't know the answer to that. Why do I not know the answer to that? So here, I will, one second. If you go to Alation.com, there's a contact option there. I'm sorry, that's a piece of the puzzle I was missing, and I did not realize it. Yeah, so once you go to Alation.com, there's a get a demo, and that will put you in touch with a person where you can start investigating. There's also a chat client where you can go in and start talking to someone now. So if you want to just investigate, see if Alation's even a good fit, they'll partner you up with an Alation expert, and you can start asking those questions and get rocking from there.
Outstanding. Nick, thanks very much for the walkthrough. We will continue to track Alation here at Solutions Review. This has been great and very informative, and we thank you for your time.
Thanks, Doug, and thank everybody for the audience. Take care, stay safe.
Next up, we are going to, at the top of the hour, have our third demo. We're 2 down, 1 to go, and that's going to be Pyramid Analytics, and one that I think is definitely worth sticking around for. Certainly a well-known and well-regarded solution. And we're going to get a detailed walkthrough and demo from them. So we'll see you all very soon. Thanks.
Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data management and analytics.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome back to Data Demo Day. Today we've been looking at 3 of the top data technologies available to you, and for this Data Demo Day, we've invited a range of solution providers, and we've shown some master data management solution, a data catalog solution. Now we're going to talk about data analytics, and we're going to have a demo from Pyramid Analytics. Pyramid's enterprise-grade BI platform supports the full self-service analytics workflow. As a complete web-based platform, users can easily prepare, model, visualize, analyze, publish, and present data to make informed business decisions. Pyramid has a platform-agnostic architecture that can be deployed on-premises, in the cloud, or across a hybrid environment. And today we are joined by Bill Balnave, Director of Global Solutions Engineering at Pyramid. Bill, thanks for being here.
Doug, good to be here. It's nice to have a social outlet other than Zoom meetings with the company. So thanks.
Well, it is. It's like a play date for data technology experts.
Exactly.
So yeah, thanks for being here. This is great. And I'm always curious before we get going about who's going to be presenting the journey that you've taken. So I know you're an industry expert and certainly have been around for a while. And you joined Pyramid about a year ago, probably just around the time the pandemic was kicking in, which I'm sure is another story which we can get into. But I'm curious what brought you to Pyramid at this stage of your career?
Yeah, so I have to tell you, being always having been on the technology side of things, for me, it's a combination of the right people and cool technology that I can get excited about, that I think is innovative and all of that. And Pyramid was absolutely a combination of both of those things. You've got a fairly mature product with a company that is, I think, very visionary and forward-looking, and has a bit of that startup feel to it, even though they've been around for a while. So yeah, it's been a great place to be so far, despite everything else that's going on in the world.
Well, it doesn't change the challenge, right? I mean, regardless of, it might distract us a little bit, all of this pandemic, but it doesn't really change the fact that the data is a problem and has to be dealt with. And
absolutely. And
Pyramid has been solving that problem for as long as we've been tracking it. And we got tracking in 2012 with Solutions Review, and have been following Pyramid since. And so we're going to take a step back. We're going to let you take over, certainly walk through a little bit more about the Pyramid story, and then share as much demo as you'd like. I know that's really what everybody's here to see under the hood. And then I'll come back at the end, and we'll do a little Q&A.
Sounds good. I like it. So as I get started, let me take 2 minutes and just essentially tee up what I'm going to show you, but also at the same time give you a sense for how Pyramid Analytics is looking at the market now. And this is absolutely a crowded space, and in the last couple of years, just a ton of technology has popped up, especially in regards to machine learning and AI, and still self-service analytics is big. But and so you have a lot of organizations, everybody, talking about being a data-driven organization, and you know, Mark Andreessen said data or software's eating the world. Well, we all know data's eating the world, growing exponentially, all of that kind of good stuff, right? And so organizations are like, look, we've got this, what we think is a business asset. We need to turn it into value and do something with it. But they struggle and are still struggling despite all of the amazing new technology that's being created. And so if you look at, and I bring the chief data officer to the middle, this is, a lot of organizations are actually appointing somebody to do this. But in some cases, this is just essentially somebody who owns making the data valuable, making the data work for an organization. And, you know, on one side, what you've got are a lot of data. And the older your organization and the larger your organization, probably not only the more data, but in different places and lots of technology. And so, you know, problem one is I got all this stuff sitting out there, all these different systems, and I need to bring it together. I need to be able to get to it, but I need to be able to get to it in a way that's, you know, secure and governable and is compliant and all of those kinds of things. So huge challenge number one. And then challenge number two is, gosh, I have all these people that I need to serve. And everyone has a kind of a different need and a different idea about what they want to do with the data and a different skill set. So, you know, marry or pair up the notion of complicated, all this data and all these different places, all these people that need to get to the data, and they've all got different ideas about what they want to do and different skill sets, and they all want to do their own thing. And how do you kind of pull all that together and control it? Well, what companies have traditionally done is they go out and they buy stuff. And, you know, you've got some probably what we would consider to be like legacy BI tools, which are kind of the older platforms that IT still owns, and you got to go to IT and they build the reports for you, and it takes a couple of weeks, and then you need something else and it's a couple more weeks and all that. So then you go buy some self-service tools, but those aren't easy to connect to the data. And now I've got kind of data chaos because everybody's building their own little report and dashboard, and they all come into these meetings and they're like, hey, here's what I think gross margin is. Oh, this is gross margin. And so it's hard to pull all of that together. And then on top of that, all of the different technologies that are coming up to market, data cataloging and AI and all these things. And so, you know, what you end up getting then is a very complicated mishmash inside of an already complicated kind of technological ecosystem, where as an organization, it costs you a lot of money to own all of this stuff, to stitch it all together, to keep it going, to update it. As a user, if I've got a certain skill set, great, I can use a particular tool. If I don't, then I'm trying to learn. And at the end of the day, I just kind of throw up my hands and say, give me data, I'm going to put it in Excel, and off I go. And in all of this, right, as you think about security and governance and using data the right way, that becomes damn near impossible to be able to control and to manage. And so we stepped back and we said, look, there is a much better way to do this. And it starts by thinking about this very differently. And it's interesting, I just read an article in InfoWorld talking to a guy, Mark Porter, who's now the CTO at MongoDB, talking about this notion of it's not just about a database anymore. It's about a data management platform. We happen to agree completely. And we think if you step back and treat data like a true business asset and you apply some very basic business philosophy and the notion of a supply chain, this gives you the opportunity to overcome all of this chaos and this craziness and really attack it. And we look at it in a couple of ways. And so first of all, I want to point out the fact that I've got a couple of different circles here. As we think about it, it's something that is continuous, right? You're constantly doing it, constantly feeds itself. I think a lot of organizations think of it as a point-to-point kind of thing. We don't. And so let me talk to you about what we see as the business decision supply chain and how we've built a product, a platform to support that. So first, there's kind of two halves of this, as you can see. And I'm calling this side the production side. It's don't worry about necessarily the manufacturing term, but the notion here is that you've got folks in your organization whose role it is to go acquire data, means I got to go grab it from all of those different places. They want to enrich it. I want to bring in reference data. I want to do some calculations. I want to apply machine learning and AI. They need to pull it together and then get it to the right people. And in a lot of cases, the people that are doing this are not your techie IT people. Maybe I am just a financial analyst that's part of for reporting to the CFO, and I need to go and get all of this stuff. So doing this means not just being able to do it; it means being able to do it in a very smart and simple way. The other side of the coin, then, the other side of the supply chain loop, are the folks that are what I'll call the consumers, right? So here, this is where I want to do a couple of things. First, I want to be able to look at the data itself. I want to explore it. And exploration means I'm going through a table. Maybe it means I've got a awesome dashboard and I'm filtering and selecting and all of that. Or maybe it means I actually get the chance to get my hands on the data itself and do some ad hoc and explore and do my own thing with it. But at the same time, I want to be able to collaborate. And by collaborate, we mean a couple of things. First of all, there's a lot of interaction going on between folks about this data. I've got monthly status meetings. We've got questions that come up we've got to be able to answer. And currently, a lot of that collaboration gets lost in email. It's in Slack. It's in a lot of different places. And when it's not tied to the data and what's going on, totally loses the context. And the other part of the collaboration is, like, when I create something, I probably want to share it. And maybe the sharing is I want to add it into a dashboard. Maybe I want to give it to a particular group so they can look at it. All of that needs to be enabled. And then as you kind of finish up, hey, we make decisions, we're using this, we're getting value out of the data. Invariably, that leads to, you know what, I need to do more stuff. I need to do more exploring and collaborating. I got more questions. I may need to go get some more data and enrich it and bring it in, all of that. And the key to all of this is to then be able to look at it and manage it like a supply chain, right? Be able to kind of look at how much time I'm spending in each of these things and optimize that, minimize the time it takes to go from getting raw data to being able to make really good business decisions about it, and be what I call kind of change resilient, because data needs are constantly changing. The data itself is constantly changing, and too often, right, we go grab the latest data and the thing that I created broke and everybody logs in and that dashboard's not working anymore, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of the age-old IT story, but it has a much broader impact here because you've got a lot more folks that are looking at data and wanting to get at it. So we said, look, this should all be powered from a single platform. And so, we've been building Pyramid, as Doug mentioned, for a long time. But what we've got now is the third iteration, if you will, the third architecture. And so it's one of those opportunities where, as a company, we've had the opportunity to learn from, having done stuff in the past and where we started. And so as we have built this platform and bring the latest incarnation to market, we really kind of follow four principles. One, it needs to scale and perform. And so latest Pyramid Analytics platform is cloud ready, but it runs on prem, you can run it hybrid. So it goes where you need to go and scales horizontally and vertically, all of that kind of good stuff, up and down as you need it to. Second, it needs to have a complete set of capability. And I wouldn't tell you that we're 100% of everything that I talked about, but inside of the Pyramid platform is enough to complete the entire supply chain in and of itself, all inside of Pyramid. But what's nice about it is that as I log in, the experience for the user is tailored to me, who I am, what my need is, what my role is, right? So we're serving all user needs. So it's not like I'm forcing my entire user community that needs to get data to learn a product, to learn code, all of those kinds of things. In fact, there's a sign in our R&D office that says, if our users need to write the same code that we do, we failed. Not to say that we don't support, you know what, you got a data scientist, you want to write Python and go crazy. Absolutely, we support that and provide the ability to do it. But we also provide the ability for you to get in and complete that supply chain without having to write any kind of code at all. And I'll show you this. We build in some change resiliency, right? Data changes, you do some work with it, things change, et cetera. You need to be able to catch that before it actually goes out. You also need to be able to have something that's modular so that as my consumer needs change, I can unplug something and plug something else in, and it becomes very easy to do as opposed to having to rewrite or start over any of that. So as I've teed that up, enough of the talk. Let's get right into the product. And as I do this, and I'm gonna switch over here. So what I want to do first of all is just remind you of that supply chain and a little bit of guidance. I'm going to start on the production side of things. And so I'm here logged in as me, and I'm an analyst. I'm just generically calling myself a business analyst. At the end of the day, I'm not an IT. I'm not a technical person. I've got some proficiency with data. You know, I'm one of those Excel maniacs who wanted a better way, and Pyramid came to me and I found my better way. And so we're going to talk about how this kind of supply chain starts. It really started in this particular case on the consumer side, where somebody said, "Hey, I need something else, and how do we get there?" So first of all, I want you to take note of the interface that you see here. As I mentioned, I didn't really mention it. I kind of alluded to it. Everything that we do, we're a completely server-based product. So I'm logged in a browser. The rich experience that you're seeing here, this is all HTML5. Right? So there's no client software, there's no desktop stuff that I have to manage, there's no plugin, there's none of this kind of moving stuff around. It's all being kind of centrally managed, which of course allows us to have that governance, security, all those kind of good things. But it also allows us then to tailor the experience. So this particular experience is tailored to me, where you can see over here on the right-hand side, I've got a whole set of kind of, here are my capabilities, right? I can model data, I can make visuals with it. I can do some kind of maybe shared business logic if I want to, and then I can put it together in a dashboard. It's a lot more capability inside of the product and administration and things like this. This is the stuff that I get. And then it's organized kind of around how I work. I can see my recent stuff, my favorites, and then if I want to build something new, that's all the way over on the left. But the other thing that you'll notice is over here in the upper right corner next to me, I've got this little red indicator that tells me I got some stuff going on. So we also have built into Pyramid Analytics into the platform the ability to do things that you may not necessarily find in your standard everyday analytics BI tool. And that is, I've got alerts and subscriptions. I can see models that I've executed, and you can see this thing called conversations. So in Pyramid Analytics, we've built, for lack of a better term, let's call it Slack-like interface. So I actually now, and by the way, interface or integrate to Slack and Teams and all that. But I jump in and I can actually now kind of host the conversations that I'm having about data and analytics and BI and things that I'm doing, how I'm supporting it with the other folks that I'm working with. What's nice about this, and I'm going to go in here into this conversation, is I can now tie this conversation to the data itself, the dashboard, the thing that I looked at, and I'll show you that in a minute. But you can see here, I got this little guy that ties me. I can jump there to the dashboard if I want. But here I can see that Joe sent me a message and said, "Hey, we want some demographic information added to this dashboard. Want to bring marketing into the monthly sales meetings, and marketing sent some data over to use." So let's pretend that, I got the data from marketing. I know what Joe's talking about. And so I actually want to now I want to add into the dashboard. So what I'm going to do is hop back to my start page, because in my favorites is the model that I've been using to do kind of my fooling around, my exploration, things like that with my data. What I've dropped into is Pyramid Analytics Model Tool. This is how we help you acquire, get to the data, and enrich it. And I want to let you know, first of all, that we're the kind of the primary way that we get at data is what we would call like direct query or in-place analytics, some of those kind of things, right? But the notion is if you don't have to move the data, we don't want you to. But we also give you full ETL capability. And so you can see here on the left-hand side, a whole list of standard connectors that I can just grab and make part of this. I'm going to click on targets really quickly, because then what you can also see is like, not only can I read from a lot of stuff, I can write to a lot of stuff as well. So we're not hindered, handcuffed by having to work with only our in-memory database, even though we offer one. We can get to all of these things and run queries directly against them without you ever having to move your data at all. So that's a great thing. So in this case, though, I want to do a little data combining, and I've got a data warehouse sitting out in Snowflake. I know that's where all my sales data is, except for the marketing data that these guys want to use. So I'm just going to grab it. I want to play around with it a little bit. So I'm going to put it into my in-memory database, which is a great thing to do. So let me just grab my Excel node, and I'm going to upload the data that marketing sent me, this customer demographic stuff, and grab this. As I'm doing that, you see it loads it up. And so there's a couple different ways that I can go at this. If I want, I can go right, if I've got just CSV, that'll load that. If I've got a formatted Excel spreadsheet, no worries. I don't have to unformat it. I can actually go in and grab just name ranges and tables and things like that. And I'm going to say, okay, go ahead and grab this thing for me. When I click on the select node, which is where I'm getting the data, I get a nice preview, right? So I can see the data that I'm working with. I can even say, click on and get some breakdown of what's in here and data ranges and values and all those kind of good things. So it gives me a sense for the data that I'm working with. And I can see here, I've got like age information and income and all of that. Knowing that the marketing folks may want to do some analysis around things like, which customers of what age are buying what things, and that, I want to do a little more to this data than just kind of drop it in. And so I'm going to click on, and by the way, over here on the left, there's a whole set of things. Once I've brought data in, there's a whole ton of things that I can do to it. And, Doug assured me that I could have a little extra time since I was last. I could spend the rest of the evening and into the morning talking about all the different things that we can do with the data. I won't do that. I'll go right to the very exciting stuff, which is the machine learning. And everybody talks about, hey, we got built-in machine learning. Okay, so we have built-in machine learning, but the way that we approach that is to, going back to that whole notion of kind of serving a wide range of users and not, having to write code if you don't have to. There's a whole ton of pre-built machine learning algorithms, regression, clustering, finding outliers, all of that kind of stuff. One of them is binning. It's a fairly simple and straightforward one. What's nice about these nodes is that at the end of the day, as long as I understand essentially what the algorithm is intended to do, or what I'm intending to do with the machine learning, I don't have to write any Python to get there. I can simply grab the node and indicate what I want to do with it. In this case, I want to create some age brackets, and we'll use, percentile, and I'd say I only want 3 for now. I just need to be able to work with it, and I'm going to call this age brackets. Okay, that's great. So when I press preview, then I can get a look at, well, what's Pyramid going to do with this? And I can see it creates the brackets, and I can see that it even creates those brackets for me. All of that is dynamic. So is this kind of true robust machine learning from the standpoint of, did I create an algorithm and train it and all of that? Now, this is more kind of on the fly stuff. I would tell you that we can absolutely support that whole thing, the notion of creating an algorithm, training it, monitoring it for accuracy as it degrades, being able to reset it, all of that kind of, that wide range of stuff can be done here. I don't do that, the data scientists do it. So for me, being able to do this is actually a huge step ahead. This makes it very easy for me to kind of do more with the data and not have to kind of figure out formulas or do something in Excel and then load it and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm going to drop this in my in-memory database. Let me click over here to data model so you can see kind of quickly what's going on. So what's nice is, so Pyramid recognized it. Here is that customer profile table. I'm looking here, and I'm just going to connect customer profile to customer, drag and drop. It says, hey, the data maybe isn't the same thing. Is that okay? Yep, I don't care. So it makes it easy for me. I don't have to try to go back out and reformat it and, you know, spend 4 hours getting the data in the right format before I plug it in. We're just going to go ahead and do that. There are a ton of other things that I can do as well. But a lot of this stuff is automated for me. I just want to point out a couple of things so that as I bring in customer data, you know, Pyramid's helping me out by recognizing things like geospatials, and it's also helping me with things that are numeric, so that it, you know, if I want to sum, if I want to average, all of those kinds of things, and all of that stuff is here. Like, so if I go to my customer profile data, for instance, I know like income, I don't want it to sum. If I'm looking at the aggregate, I want the aggregate to the average. I want the aggregate of like how many children have folks got, number of cars, age, all of those things. So I can make that adjustment here pretty quickly. And then the last thing I can do, and to me, this is really powerful because, you know, a lot of folks love putting data in cubes because of the flexibility and capability that it gives you. I'm just going to do that without having to put the data in cubes. I'm going to be able to actually cubize it. So I know the marketing folks are probably going to want to do some drill downs and groupings and things like that. So I can make a quick drill path where I can go from, say, occupation, so who are people, to gender, to kind of, well, maybe I want to know where they live, and then maybe I want to know what they're buying, and then I want to know who they're buying it from. Okay, that's awesome. And yeah, then here's my customer profile. I just add that in. And then finally, last, certainly not least, who gets to look at this? Who's working with it? I can set that read write both on the data itself and the model and all of that. And once that's done, and I'll do a quick save and click run, and we're off the races. And I will ask, once this thing is run, I'll ask Pyramid to drop me into the Discover module so that I can create a visualization for it, play around with the data, take a look at it, and then maybe drop it into the dashboard that Joe was talking about. All right, so now I've transitioned from going and grabbing the data, and you see in a quick 5 minutes, probably less than 5 minutes because I'm doing all this talking, I was able to go and take an extract from my data warehouse, grab some Excel data, put it together so that I have the opportunity now to create a visualization that I can then you know, pull together and then offer out, share out to the rest of the folks, Joe and all of his team who are doing this analysis. So just really quickly, I want to kind of show off the hierarchy that I created. This is probably what I'm going to stick with, but there's that hierarchy. And I'll just grab like return dollars and revenue. And you can see here, I can quickly drill. So I'm drilling across multiple tables and data sources. And this thing acts just like a cube. And if I'm doing any kind of calculations and all of that gets carried forward. It's all kind of accounted for in this. So this is pretty powerful. But I want to kind of focus on, so this is one way of focusing on the demographics. I'm going to focus on it in a different way. But one of the other things that I want to do is, I know that in talking to Joe maybe, or maybe I'm, you know, in talking to some other folks, I know that they're keenly interested in what is the percentage of revenue that ends up being return dollars. This is something that folks are looking at. And I know that's not anywhere in the data, but I want to be able to offer it up and do it in a way that not only is it good for the visualization that I've got here, but I can use it in a lot of other places, right? So that whole notion of reusability and being able to service the whole supply chain. So a couple of clicks, return dollars revenue. So I will create a new measure, basically constructed on, make it a ratio on these two, and quick calculation, and there it is, and I can see that it's 19%. What Pyramid has done, though, has been very smart about this. And so a couple of things. One, I'm going to drop down here to the lower left corner where you can see this fancy thing appear, which is, oh, there it is. And it's not only now is it useful for the visualization that I'm creating here, but a couple of things. I can right click. I can adjust properties. So, you know, I call it something different if I want to. This is going to be a percent, so I'll make it a percent. But the other thing that I can do, and this is the magic, is I can make it shareable. So if this is something that I know that we're going to use in other dashboards that folks are going to want to be able to do ad hoc reporting on and all that, I can basically say, make this shareable, apply the same kinds of security and everything that I did with the model. And now anyone that has access, has rights, is in the role and all of that, has access to this. So the other nice thing about this is, well, so one, first of all, a lot less work now when I'm doing things, because this is now reusable. The other thing is I can enforce standards so that, everybody doesn't roll into the monthly sales meeting with a different version if it's of the truth, if you will. So let me get rid of these guys. And then I also know that I want to look at this over time. So let's trend this out by quarter. And I'm going to grab start date for quarter. Let's go here, and there that is. That's nice, but that's kind of ugly to look at. By the way, as you'd expect, whole host of visualizations, even the ability to add your own custom visualizations very easily if you want to. Again, this could be, we could spend hours and hours and hours going through all the different things that you can look at. I'm going to be boring and just go with the line chart. And here I can see, gosh, the percentage of revenue that is return dollars is trending up. That's kind of scary. So now I might get asked like, well, where's that going to go? That's okay. We've seen where we've been. What does the future look like? So I think now it's going to be kind of important to maybe apply a little more machine learning, which I'll do very quickly. Like, look at that. There's my line. First of all, you can see some functions here. Again, these are the kind of the quick and dirty semi-data scientist, citizen data scientist kind of stuff. But I can add in a quick linear regression, and then I want to be able to do forecasting, and I've got several algorithms that you see here that I can do. I'm just going to go sit on this one. It will forecast not only my line, but the regression line as well. And then as I look at this, I'm going to say, you know what? I want to break this down by my age brackets so that we can kind of look at that as well. And so I want to trellis this because I want these to be individual charts. And voila, I actually just created 3 charts in one by being able to do this trellising. And I can look that there are actually some differences between how returns have gone based on age group. And so now I can give this to my marketing folks and they can jump in and all that goodness. So let's save this guy and let's make sure that everybody can use it. And we're going to call this demo day chart. And click save. And now the next thing I want to do is I want to make this available for everybody to use. I want to put it in a dashboard, all that kind of good thing. But what's interesting, and let me jump into my Content Explorer here really quickly, and we'll go to my Discovers and go to that demo day chart. Before I actually roll this out to the world, I want to make sure that this is going against the right data. This was my kind of demo data and stuff, but I know the minute that Joe or one of the other line of business managers starts to look at this, they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, that's not my data. They're going to question the data. So I got to make sure that we've got the right stuff. So into the management piece of that whole supply chain thing, we do a ton here, right? So complete metadata management, security, versioning, all of those kinds of things. But one of the other things that we do that I think is fairly unique to us and really slick and helps avoid lots of problems in the future is we have this thing called the data source changer and then another thing called the data structure analyzer. So right now I can see that my fancy new hotness chart is going against my dev data. And you know what? I don't want it to do that. I need it to go against the Snowflake data. And so rather than having to like rewrite this thing, start over, etc., I can just use the data source changer, go here and say, all right, let's put it on the monthly reporting sales model, click apply, and that's great. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to close that. But then the other thing that I want to do is I want to make sure before I release it to the world, hey, is there anything bad? Did anything change? And so data structure analyzer goes into my chart and compares it to the data source that I just set it against, and it says, hey, there's a field here that I don't get. You might want to fix that. Here it is. And so I look and I'm like, oh, age brackets. Well, I know actually, I think they call that age group. Okay, well, there it is right there. Click and apply. And whew, I just avoided, right, being all proud of this new graph and dropping it into the dashboard and then realizing, oh no, it's, it doesn't work. And Joe being like, what the heck, and all those kinds of things. Okay, so awesome new chart, ready to roll that out. Let's put it in the dashboard so Joe can see it. So let me go over here to my monthly sales analysis dashboard, and we're going to open this up and edit it. And so for us in the dashboarding paradigm is all about reusability. And so I have the ability to take my visualizations and shared business logic and slicers and all these kinds of things. And rather than having to start from scratch, I can pull it together and construct it. So here's the monthly sales analysis dashboard that I know Joe and the rest of the line of business managers look at because I created it for them and they've kind of enhanced it and all of that. But I want to bring now this demographics chart in. So I'm going to go ahead and make some room for it. And we'll just kind of slide that guy over. And of course, we resize that, make it very easy. And by the way, I also want to point out the fact that this is the third module that I've shown you now. This is the pyramid analytics presentation module. And as we go through the supply chain, I've gone from acquire and enrich to now we're in the assemble part so that we can deliver it. And this is what we call the light version of the present module. And again, going back to that notion of being able to cater to everybody, you can see here I've got a very simple layout and just some very simple buttons to be able to grab. There's, of course, a pro version of this that has a lot more to it, that gives you a lot more capability. You know, for me, I just want to be able to use this. If I need anything more, I might get somebody else to do it. But what this allows me to do is go and grab stuff. And here's my demo day chart. And just pull it onto, let's do that again because that wasn't very good. There we go. Pull it on and add this in. Here it is. We'll shrink this down. Oh, that's the wrong one. That would be no fun. You go to recent, grab demo day chart, much better. Put this in its place. And as you can imagine, like there's a whole bunch of other things and formatting and things like that that you can do that are all part of the pro version. I'm just going to do the basics. But the one thing that I do want to do is, so now you can see I've got some filters over here. I want to make sure that those interact. And this is just a matter of, hey, when you slice on sales team, let's make sure that this chart gets that. Okay, this looks great. Everything's done. I'm going to go ahead and say, save and close, and we'll jump back here to home. And then I could even pop over and let Joe know, go back into my conversation and let him know, and the group. And we click boom, and away we go. So that is the production side of things. And I know coming up on time a little bit, but let me jump over to the consumer side very quickly. And now let's see what Joe's experience looks like. So what does it look like now that we've popped over here? So first of all, a couple of things. You can see that this interface, very different from the one we were looking at. So this is kind of the simplest kind of consumer mode. So this is everything's kind of dialed off. I just want to consume some stuff. I'm not necessarily going to build anything or any of that. I just want the basics and to be able to get the stuff that I want to get at, and maybe you can help me out and let me search and all of those kinds of things. This is that interface. But there's a couple of things that I'll point out before I kind of dive into it. So first of all, as a user in this side, I have the ability to subscribe to content that I get to, and I'll show you how we do that in a minute. And I can have that then delivered to me on a regular basis, and those are the things that you can see here. I also have my conversations here, and here you can see there's Bill coming back to me and saying, hey, we're all set. Go ahead and take a look. Let's bring this thing up. So let's do that. And I have the ability to click and jump into that dashboard now and take a look at what Bill has created for me and whether this is going to work or not, and play around with it. As well as what I want to do now is kind of give you the full self-service experience. So here you can see that interaction is tied explicitly to the data itself. And I can see that going back and forth, and that'll stay there as long as I want it to, and I can archive it and all of that. Here you can see my demo date chart. And if I want to kind of, deselect some things and funnel this down, like, now everything kind of filters and selects based on what I'm doing. So all of the basics, all of the kind of goodness that you would expect. I can do things like go in and rate this. So I can, not only can I let Joe know through comments, but anybody else that may look at this or find it, I can come in here and say, hey, this is cool. This is serving my needs, and all of that. But there's a ton of other capability that I get as a consumer of stuff. And let me show you that in the context of this dashboard. First of all, we do a thing called Smart Insights. And this is a little bit of AI to give you a natural language version of what you're looking at and give you the salient points. So if you think about what goes on in most monthly sales meetings, those are usually like going through and you're typically kind of talking about the same things to get started because it's an operational meeting, and then you're looking for the outliers. Well, rather than having to look at this and then do the interpretation, we provide a thing called Smart Insights, which essentially does the baseline operational interpretation for me. So in Smart Insights, I can see things like, what are the averages for my measures? I get a Pareto analysis, relationships between two things, where are the trends? So rather than me having to, take a half an hour and click around and change and filter and all of that, Pyramid Analytics gives that to me. I can see the light version, which, for me as a line of business manager, this is good enough for me. If I want to understand deeper and get more into the statistical analysis of it, things like correlation and all of that, I can get that in the advanced version of Smart Insights. And then there's a categorical version as well. And in some cases, I've got categories, and in some cases I don't. Demo crime there. Sorry about that. I didn't have any categories to show you in this particular graph. So that's, but that gives you, right? So all of the kind of upfront analysis that I would be kind of doing manually and looking at it, that's done. I don't have to worry about that. I've got that for me. And so every month that I go into the meeting, the basics are done. The other thing that I can do, though, is I can actually have a conversation with my data through our natural language query chatbot. And so let me highlight that feature. So if we look here at this profit versus returns trend, which I'm going to zoom in on this, like this is kind of disturbing to me, right? Because blue is profit, returns like, this doesn't look good. I want to find out what's going on. So let me do some analysis by having a conversation. And so I can come in here and I can say, hey, you know what? Let's just focus on 2021. And there we go. And as I'm going along, then Pyramid Analytics will kind of basically repaint that for me. And I'm like, okay, this is nice, but you know what? I want to look at it as a grid. And here, rather than having to know specific commands, I'm literally kind of talking to it as I would kind of talk to myself or talk to somebody else as we're doing this. So now this is interesting. I see returns and profit, but then I'm not really comparing the same thing. So let's say I want to remove returns. And you'll notice here that it's helping me out as well. And I'm getting a little type ahead on things like measures and dimensions and hierarchies. So let's remove returns. And maybe I want to put in add return dollars. And that's kind of, all right, profit going down, return dollars kind of maybe being more than where I want it to be. You know what? I want to look at this a completely different way. I can actually scrub this and start all over. And I can say, show me the top 3 manufacturers by return dollars. And it basically gives me a brand new graph. And then I can say, hey, give me the grid. And then maybe say, forecast, return dollars. Oh, it didn't quite get there. All right. Well, because probably one more time. Oh, almost. Well, at least it's a live product. So the other thing that I can do then, kind of coming full circle and wrapping things up, as I mentioned before, is I've got the ability to subscribe to this as well. So in some cases, I like the ability to simply just get something in email as opposed to having to log in, and I want to be able to look at it really quickly, and I don't want to have to remember to do it, and maybe I don't have to log in to do it, etc. Maybe I want to look at it on my phone, whatever that happens to be. I have the ability here to come in, and so first of all, I can print this out if I want it now, which means just drop it into an export and in a bunch of formats, or I can go ahead and actually fully subscribe to this. So I've got a great selection of formats that I want to look at if I want to. It can be PDF, PowerPoint, etc. You know what? Maybe I want to put this in PowerPoint because I know, like I said, we're going to do this every month, and I'm going to drive this from PowerPoint. I'm going to use PowerPoint to share it with other folks, whatever that happens to be. And then I have the ability to essentially schedule this. So there's some basic scheduling, and I can get it either inside the internal bulletin board, or I can have it sent to me in email, or I can get kind of fairly complicated in terms of the scheduling if I want to. hour, daily, weekly, et cetera. When do I want to run it? What time zone am I looking at? All of those kinds of things. And once I've clicked subscribe, in the background, then Pyramid Analytics Task Scheduler goes off and does its thing. And then rather than me having to, if I just want to look at a basic layout every week, going through the process of logging in and all of that, I can get this dropped into my email, take a look at the PDF really quickly. And if I want to basically do some more exploring from there, I can drop into that. And then kind of finally, as I kind of get more comfortable with this and there's more that I want to do, there's a whole host of capability that I have just from this kind of basic kind of viewer consumer perspective or user, if you will, all the way to the point of me like, hey, if I actually want to go ahead and do some ad hoc and play around with it, I can drop into a simplified version of the Discover tool and play around with it and even save it off and use it later if I want to. So coming back and wrapping up, just really quickly, I'm hoping that you thought what you saw was cool and comprehensive and amazing and forward-thinking and innovative. We're hearing a lot of good things from folks like Dresner and Bark. And as you look at the Bark thing, you're reading that right. If you've looked at their business intelligence, their BI survey, they are fairly comprehensive. It's a ton of categories, and we have a #1 placement 92 times and 90 additional kind of top 5, top 10 leading positions. And what's great about Bark is that all of this is from contact with our customers. This is not necessarily just their analysts and what they think. This is all coming from our customer base and what our customer base thinks and how they're rating us. So huge. So with that, I'll actually stop and say if we've got questions or things like that, or Doug, if you've got some questions, let's go ahead and have a conversation.
All right, Bill. Well done. I always have questions, so you can expect to get a few anyway. I'm always curious about what I'm always curious about customers. I mean, our audience are customers, right? So what are the challenges that customers are coming to you with? What are kind of the larger ones that you're kind of seeing repeatedly?
So I'll tell you, I'm hearing really two things. And as you can imagine, and I'll just state the obvious, everybody's got something. In fact, not only does everybody have something, everybody's got lots of things, right? So the notion of, my God, why do we need another BI and data analytics tool? That's kind of how I'm interpreting your question. And we're hearing a couple of things. One, hey, the stuff that we've got is just not performing. We bought it, we got really excited about it. Now we started to shove a ton of data into it and a lot of different users and reports and all of that, and it's just tipping over. Wasn't architected to do what we wanted to do. It's legacy technology. It's not keeping up. That's one. And so that gives us an opportunity to come in and it's a performance thing. Or, the second thing is, hey, we like our self-service tool. We're pretty good at data management, but we need something to do report bursting. Or, we need something to basically be the data governance and security layer and maybe help out our kind of casual users and things like that. And then maybe embed some things, but we want to keep some of this other stuff. So there's kind of this gap that they're trying to fill. And given the breadth of capability that we've got and how easy we are to deploy, we jump right in and fill in that gap.
Yeah, interesting. So one of the questions we have is regarding the smart AI-driven analytics, which the question is, do you have to pull all that data into an in-memory environment in order to have the smart data AI work? Yeah,
so the smart insights thing that I showed, and I should have showed it and didn't. All of the data all those visualizations that you saw on that dashboard, they were all driven direct query against Snowflake and a couple of other data sources. So, and all those smart insights are generated kind of on the fly, and the data stays where it is. So you don't have to pull it in. We don't have to have it in our in-memory database to be able to take advantage of that capability. We just do that.
Great. Scalability. It's an issue certainly in general, scalability, and I think that's what's driving a lot of the adoption at this point.
Big time.
But can you talk a little bit about how scalability and Pyramid addresses?
Absolutely. And I won't bring up the architecture diagram. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. So, like I said, we're a server-based product, right? And we are, to use the analogy, I mean, we were kind of we built it on a container architecture before there were containers. So there are several pyramid processes that run in the background and all talk to each other, all kind of Java-based. And so then that gives us the ability, if you need some more query horsepower, you just amp up the pyramid runtime engine. If you've got a lot of models and interface, you amp up the model engine. If you're running a bunch of Python, you amp that up. If you've got a lot of users, amp up the pyramid router and web interface on the front end to be able to handle all the requests coming in. So scales up, scales down, all of that. You can deploy it on multiple boxes in multiple places. You can put a little in the cloud, a little on-prem. Kubernetes compliance, you can deploy it in the Kubernetes-based container system and use Kubernetes as well. So
one of the things that I was interested in actually was that collaboration messaging feature you showed early on. Can you talk a little bit more about how people are taking advantage of that? I thought that was quite...
Well, I'd like to take credit. I'll thank our CTO, Avi Perez, for that little stroke of genius. So people are doing it in a couple of ways. So I talked about this notion of, or the analogy I think I used in the demo is this notion of like, I do a monthly sales meeting. And so, we're all sitting down and we're first of all, before the sales meeting, everybody's talking behind the scenes as to like, why did that spike? What happened there? Right. And a lot of times you're capturing those notes in a PowerPoint or in someplace else. This allows you to actually do it and make annotations right in the dashboard itself and then carry it over. So as I go month to month, like, hey, what did we talk about last week? Oh, there's the conversation stream, and oh, Joe was going to take care of that. Like all of that is tied to the data and it's all right there. So you've got all of that kind of stuff going on, all the backstory. The other way that I see customers doing it or using it or leveraging it is, and I kind of leverage it this way as well. We have some customers that actually use our platform to provide data services to their customers, and they use conversation as a way to collect feedback on the things that their end customer is looking at to know, like, how do you want to adjust this, or what trouble are you having, or how would you rather see this? So that's kind of the two ways that I've seen folks take advantage of that conversations thing. But yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of people that are like, man, I'm glad you thought of that, because otherwise I'm going back and forth between email and Slack and 10 other different places to try and find what I need.
Well, and I think that, with everything that's happened in the last year, I think there's even more layers on top of that now with all the collaborative tools everybody's leveraging. And again, I that kind of thinking, given the challenges that we're all facing these days, I just thought that was spot on. So obviously the question I always have, the question I think our audience always has is how do we, or how would they engage? What do you prefer? Is there a demo that or a trial that you're trying to do? Is there some sort of engagement POC? How do people get engaged?
Absolutely. So first of all, reach out to us. The website, you can send me an email. You can send an email to sales@pyramidanalytics.com or customer success@pyramidanalytics.com, and we'll engage with you. We have a hosted trial server. So for those folks who want to get a sense for how things work and they want to play with it a little bit and get that hands-on and that self-service experience, we absolutely do that. And we'll even go so far as to, if you've got a particular use case and you want to see it work with your data in your environment and all of that, we absolutely will do a proof of concept as well and have a ton of options around doing that. And that's typically something that we can do in a week or two. We get Pyramid stood up pretty quickly and connected to data pretty quickly. And then from there, it's just, what do you want to do with it?
Well, so before we say goodbye, I'm curious just about advice. I always am interested in hearing what folks who've seen a lot have to offer. What kind of advice would you provide to folks that may be thinking what they have isn't quite where they want to be, or kind of trying to wrap their head around even engaging and trying to bring in something new? I mean, what should they be thinking about?
So two ways or two answers to this question. And look, I realize that I showed a ton of capability, and there are folks that look at self-service tools and they get excited. There are folks that look at analytics tools and they're like, oh my God, how am I going to get started with that? We don't have the data for that. We don't have the. So I say two things. First of all, do not let perfect be the enemy of good. You've got it. You have to get started. If you don't get started and you're spending all of this time kind of planning or figuring out, you never end up getting there. And it's only until you actually start showing people data and giving them the opportunity to interface with it that you actually get to the real learning and you get the real value out of it. That's one. Two, the phrase I say is build a bridge. If you've got folks that are used to looking at a 10-tab Excel spreadsheet or a 20-page PDF printout that's all tables, you can't drop them into a fancy dashboard and expect that they're going to go, oh, there's the value, amazing, right? You've got to be able to tie them from what they're used to looking at to to this online experience, and you go slow. And what you need is a tool or a platform that allows you to evolve as your users get smarter and get more comfortable and get more used to things, as opposed to dropping them into something fancy and complicated and expecting them to swim.
Well, outstanding job, Bill. We appreciate the time today. We will certainly continue to track pyramid analytics as we have for the past 8 years at Solutions Review. Again, thank you very much for sharing all that information.
My pleasure. Thanks, Doug. Have a great day.
Thanks. Well, and that wraps it up. Another demo day in the books. This is our 4th data demo day. We're actually going to have a 5th data demo day on April 22nd coming up. 3 more solutions, another 3-hour presentation. We would certainly hope that you all join us for that. If not, certainly every company that you saw here today is available on Solutions Review, as well as obviously at their websites. We want to thank you all very much for being a part of this, and we look forward to having you be a part of our next one. Thanks.